Hey guys, welcome back. We have a new week of astrology to get into. I do think that this week, especially after we move through Wednesday and beyond, we could start to see some of this ongoing tension that has just really been kind of holding strong and affecting a lot of different things over the course of this past 2 weeks, really since the full moon in Sagittarius took place. We could see some of that start to break down, loosen up, open up, and I do think there's going to be a bit of a return of hope and optimism as we move into Tuesday, Wednesday, and specifically the later part of the week. But we've got like a real interesting series of energetic dynamics going on this week. We actually start the week on Monday in what could feel like a pretty prominent low. You could feel drained, tired, exhausted, like you just can't get out of bed, like can't shake yourself out of it, kind of dazed and confused. We have an exact Sun-Neptune square that is taking place on Monday. And not only that, the moon in Gemini will also be squaring Mars in Virgo. This is a very like mentally combative, argumentative, verbal conflict type of energy. I would not expect people to be in the best mood on Monday, especially if you're like waking them up and they'd rather be sleeping. This could have some people like acting kind of nasty, in a pretty bad mood to get the day started. So perhaps something to be aware of. And it's interesting because then as we move into the energy of Tuesday, actually, we have what is generally one of the best and most blessed aspects of the whole year taking place, our annual Sun-Jupiter alignment, and happening in the sign of Cancer, which is a really great location for a conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter. The only problem is this is being tightly squared by Neptune and Saturn in the sign of Aries. So I do think that could be bringing it down a couple of pegs in terms of the very benefic general feelings and vibes and nature of a Sun-Jupiter conjunction. But regardless, I do think that this is still going to mark a point of return for like hope or optimism or things kind of seemingly shifting in our favor somehow. On Tuesday, while the Sun-Jupiter alignment takes place, we also have the moon in Gemini squaring the node. So it could feel like some type of like fated turning point, or there could just be like very karmic things coming up in the nature of our experiences and circumstances throughout the day on Tuesday. So that's a pretty interesting energetic dynamic we're going to be talking about in our report for today. Wednesday, we also have the new moon in Cancer taking place. And then as we move through the rest of the week, this cardinal square that's been ongoing will begin to break apart. And again, tension seems to be being released, at least for the time being. And we've got some energetic shifts going on later in the week as well. So lots to talk about, you guys. Lots of astro weather to report on this week. Let's get into the report, put it all together, see if we can get an idea of where we're at as Monday comes in and we get our week started, and perhaps the trajectory of energetic events as we move throughout the course of our week. Welcome back to my channel, you guys. Today is Monday, June 23rd, 2025. My name is Aubrey. This is your astrological outlook of the day, where we are narrating the shift of the ages. And if you guys stick with me until the end of this video, I have done a collective tarot reading for us today as well. I like to tap the energy field for more than one modality whenever I'm doing these energy overviews, just to get an alternative energetic perspective on what's going on out there. So there could be some messages in there for you. We are going to do that at the end. We have a whole bunch of astrology to get into as we start our week this week. As I mentioned in my intro, I do feel like this is probably the period of time where all of this pressure and tension that we have been dealing with since that full moon in Sag hit a couple of weeks ago, if you remember, is probably going to begin to dissipate and to open up. That's happening for a couple of reasons, primarily because after we really get through the new moon this week on Wednesday, that cardinal square that has been very much sustained between Neptune and Saturn in a conjunction in the sign of Aries and Jupiter and the Sun in a conjunction in the sign of Cancer is beginning to break apart, beginning to wane. Okay, we have the sun moving forward, the sun moves much more quickly than Jupiter. So the sun will break that square first, but that begins to happen Wednesday, specifically Thursday and through the weekend. And Jupiter also begins to move out of that square. So while Jupiter will linger a lot longer in that square than the sun does, we are finally breaking the exact activations that have been ongoing in association with those 4 planets. And this should begin to alleviate some of the tension and some of the pressure and tension associated with that. And not only that, we also have this Sun-Jupiter conjunction that is taking place exactly on Tuesday, which we're going to be talking about today. That is also generically, like most basic astrology, one of the best and brightest and most positive and benefic and optimistic and uplifting and fortunate and hopeful aspects in all of astrology, the conjunction of Jupiter and the sun, especially taking place in the sign of Cancer, which is a sign where Jupiter is exalted. Like, this is a very benefic transit. Now, as I also mentioned in my intro, the fact that it is taking place in a square to Saturn and Neptune is a bit of a downer, and I don't know, we could feel that somehow. Like, it could feel like something about the good things that are happening or what we're looking forward to, or like the future outlook or the growth or expansion is being limited or restricted or like brought down, deflated in some type of a way. But also, and again, like in the greater context of the direction that this square is heading right now, if you think about it, this square, as I've said, like, it's been very in effect for essentially like the past 2 weeks. And the very last thing that happens before these planets finally begin to separate is the exact conjunction between the sun and Jupiter. And that is this good fortune, these blessings, you know, this positive, hopeful, faithful, truth, wisdom, broadened perspective, upliftment type of vibe. So I do feel like it is a positive omen sort of for the direction that things are going to begin to head once this tension does begin to break down, or also perhaps the resistance, the obstruction, the challenges that we've been facing in alignment with the formation of this square, having some type of successful breakthrough, positive outcome, or just opening up into something that is more, I don't know, like beneficial or positively oriented than maybe perhaps we thought. I do think that come Tuesday, moving into Wednesday, and then the rest of the week, where we had been quite hopeless or things may have seemed quite impossible, we could suddenly be seeing, you know, a glimmer of light, or, you know, regaining a sense of hope or faith about or in a situation. So even though Monday may be a bit of a rough start, and I'll talk more about Monday in depth as we move through the report, there does seem to be something that we are coming to a point of overcoming, making it through in a way that restores a sense of hope or optimism Tuesday, moving through the rest of the week. This could also be like some type of lucky break. There's this energy to me that I'm picking up on also about like being at the right place at the right time. Jupiter in the sign of Cancer with the sun there is going to bring out like the best in people, especially in regards to generosity, compassion, empathy, like offering a helping hand. Okay, so I think that one of the ways that the more fortunate end of this Jupiter energy is likely to manifest, especially with the square there, is, you know, if we do find ourselves sort of caught in the crosshairs or in a bit of an unfortunate situation, or, you know, really struggling with something, or, you know, feeling like we're at a bit of an impasse somehow in the energy of Monday moving into Tuesday, or even on Tuesday perhaps, a stroke of luck, someone coming or showing up out of nowhere to lend support, assistance, kindness, helping hand, like that's the type of thing that is definitely, I think, turning things around to some extent, creating sort of like a positive ripple that's going to move throughout the rest of the week come Tuesday into Wednesday. And it's real interesting also that like a lot of this same energy is what's going to be present for our new moon in Cancer on Wednesday, which we'll be talking about in the next video. New moons indicate energy that is going to be unfolding throughout the course of the month. So actually, and again, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself because we've got a whole video about this topic on Wednesday, but as we get the week started on Monday, you guys, if things do just feel hopeless or deflated or like on the floor or like you just can't go on or, you know, just really drained or depressed or discouraged about something, breakthroughs in a positive direction, it could be slow progress, but something that restores our hope and optimism is probably going to be a feature not only of Tuesday, Wednesday, you know, this week generally, but the entire next 4 weeks. It seems like we're being like pulled out of something and somehow like put in a better place. So there is a bit of a broader outlook, and that is what we need to do right now. There's a couple, I feel like, remedies and antidotes to dealing with this energy. And again, I'll talk about it as we get more through the report, but cultivating our faith right now, really allowing that to be our source of comfort and security, trying our best to maintain the bigger, broader perspective on things, and also applying our energy in the context of like the little things in our life that we can control instead of trying to control those things which are just apparently and clearly and obviously out of our control. This kind of like triad of mental framing and energy application and faith cultivation, I do think is a very beneficial combination as we traverse these upcoming energetic times that we're moving through right now. And I will talk more about that as we move through the report. But overall, generally, I do think that this week is going to represent, in a lot of cases, some type of either like in the moment or eventual success or victory over some circumstance or some oppression that leads to some type of growth, expansion, forward movement, maybe also some type of truth finally breaking through some veil or some illusion here as well. Things have been so cloudy, you guys, and Monday too, but over this past couple of weeks with this Neptunian influence involved in this cardinal square, like, that makes it almost impossible to discern truth from illusion, especially when we're dealing with Sagittarius or Jupiter and Neptune. That's like Sagittarius and Pisces square. That's like, because Jupiter, this is about the truth and wisdom and the broader perspective, right? And the like knowing what's going on. And Pisces is the illusion. This is the dream. This is the fantasy. Neptune doesn't make things clear. Neptune is the literal fog. So and when they're in a square aspect, this is conflicting forces. And that's also why I've been saying like battle of the narrative, like, storylines at odds. And with Jupiter in the sign of Cancer and the sun coming there as well, it's like for the control of the public sentiment, for like whoever is in control of the greatest amount of people, whoever can sway public perception to the greatest extent in a setup like this, it seems like where the power or the victory or the success is gonna come in. So it's been a very fishy past couple of weeks energetically in terms of being able to truly see things as they are and, you know what's up and know what's down and know what's right and know what's wrong and know what's real and know what's not. And, as we get the week started on Monday, we do very much have this, but as that Sun-Jupiter conjunction hits exactly, this is likely to highlight some big truth somehow that may begin to crack through or dissolve some standing or long-standing illusion or fantasy or misperception or false narrative or false construct or something like that, projection. There could be some truth that does begin to show through Tuesday and moving forward through the rest of the week. And remember, and again, like, I don't want to get too much into it right now, as I said, because we've got a whole video coming out next about this, but our Cancer season this year, oh my gosh, you guys, it's going to be very revealing in many of the ways that this past Gemini season was. That also started out speaking about seeing into the shadows, like shining light into the shadows, and really figuring out what's been going on under the surface of things, like seeing the inner workings of things to a very deep and complex level. And as we move into this Cancer season as well, that is also about some type of truth finally beginning to come to the surface, to be revealed, to be exposed, like the lid again being able to be lifted off perhaps some long withheld or restrained truth, knowledge, wisdom, information, something like that. But we also, in our Cancer season this year and during our Cancer lunar cycle, are going to have Uranus leave Taurus, enter Gemini, and begin forming that trine to Pluto and Aquarius. I'm telling you, you guys, we got some real strange, bizarre stuff happening. And that's what I was saying in my videos for last week. Like, even though we have this really crazy, tense, hypercharged, insane amount of pressure, everything coming to a head, clash of the titans type of energy going on, and that's what we've been moving through, the outcomes have not been predictable, because whereas things would have always gone a certain way in the past under these same sets of circumstances, the way that things are going, and also the fact that we have this Sun-Jupiter alignment in Cancer happening that is really like bridging us into that energy. Like, it is happening exactly on the very last day of our Gemini season, right before the new moon in Cancer. The new moon in Cancer, this is a cardinal cycle. This is an action-oriented cycle. And with the Jupiter conjunction going on right there, and now we're beyond the square. We're not building into the square with Saturn and Neptune. We're not an exact square with Saturn and Neptune. We are a degree beyond that square. And then we're heading right into this Uranus changing signs, entering the sign of Gemini. There is just things are going to shift and change in ways that we could not have anticipated or predicted or imagined. And I think it's still going to be quite disorienting. I think a lot of the stuff that happens is not necessarily going to help us, like, solidify our grip on reality. Like, things could still seem just like totally otherworldly and bizarre and like sci-fi world big time as we begin to move through our Cancer season and hit this Uranus Gemini transit from the Western tropical perspective, and that trine to Pluto. But things are probably like, it's just funny how, to me, like how this is coming together. Like, we've been in this place of extreme tension, right? Uranus was hypercharged involved as this cardinal square hit. I was talking about that in my past 2 weeks of videos, starting with that full moon in Sag video. Mars square Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Sun, cardinal squares. This was extreme tension. Like, things are coming to a head. But then the very last like activation of that square is the Sun exactly conjunct Jupiter. Some type of like positive development somehow, and that's what breaks us through into this incoming Uranian energy, which is going to change how we're thinking about everything, you guys. This Uranus Gemini trine Pluto Aquarius transit that we have coming in here is really going to bend the mind, I think, and we're just going to, I search for words for it, because I don't even know that there is words for, or like ways to describe what's incoming right now, because this is going to be stuff that we just don't necessarily have like historical precedent for, that we couldn't have thought of, that we couldn't have imagined, like hyper novelty, that whole theme and concept. That is where we are like headed direct collision course as we move through the rest of this week, enter Cancer season, and begin to move throughout our Cancer cycle this year. So that's where we're going, you guys. And I do think that good news, again, could come this week. While Jupiter and the Sun hit that conjunction on Tuesday, the moon will be in Gemini, square the nodes. This could be some good news. And the moon's placement is important when we're talking about a conjunction that is happening between these important planets in the sign of Cancer, because Cancer's ruled by the moon. So whatever's going on with the moon is extra important when we're trying to understand the impact of the Cancer Jupiter Sun conjunction. So there could be some, and of course Gemini, this is the messenger planet. There could be some good news, some, again, like positive developments, things like suddenly looking up somehow that come in terms of a conversation or the informational component about something, hearing back about something, receiving a message, gaining some insight, learning something. But I do think that's how things are kind of orienting themselves as we hit Tuesday and move through the week. But you know, as I've stated, we are not entirely out of the weeds there, especially as we hit the energy of Monday. And really, you know, we're still in this kind of like give and take energy. Ever since we started the Jupiter Saturn square, I've been talking about how this energy requires, like, it does help us to, you know, gain the wisdom necessary to overcome limitations, but it also generally requires some type of sacrifice, or we need to surrender something. I mean, with Saturn and Neptune both there, this is the definite and dissolving, dismantling of something that has been quite structural or foundational in our lives somehow for a very long period of time. Traditionally, this could also represent just like the rules or the conventions or the norms that we're used to things operating under. Like, there has to be some type of give and take when we're dealing with a Saturn-Jupiter square dynamic. And because this energy is, of course, still very much present for our new moon on Wednesday, that means that over the course of the next 4 weeks that are encompassed through this Cancer lunar cycle, there is probably still going to be developing themes relating to that, like, journey to overcome, persevere, I don't know, graduate or expand out of something, and what we need to let go of, what's being dismantled, what's falling away as like the byproduct back end of that. Like, we're still in that energy, but I just think that things are opening up more. I think that they're going to be looking up. I think that we're going to be like finding solutions and receiving physical, cosmic, like some type of support, spiritual, some type of support that is finding its way to us as we move through this period of time, that helps us to make these breakthroughs or to let these things go as we're moving in this new direction. So I do think that we're gonna have like assistance or blessings or good luck, you know, stuff along those lines that is somehow like perceivable to us as we begin to move through the week. But we definitely, especially again in the energy of Monday, are probably facing some very argumentative, conflict-oriented, like verbal battle type of stuff going on. We've got that moon in Gemini and the Mars in Virgo square taking place. This is probably one of the just more like nasty type of energies, transits that there is, because we're talking about the moon, that's how we're feeling, and then we're talking about Mars, that's like, you know, anger and aggression and hostility and the battle planet, and then we're talking about both of the Mercury oriented signs. This could definitely be bringing up conflicts in regards to ideas and opinions, very polarized viewpoints about things, disagreements. I think that people could just be kind of going at it, and I don't really think that anyone's going to be in the all-time best moods Monday morning, especially when we take that square between the moon and Mars. This could be like emotional conflict going on within us as well that makes people just kind of lash out and be in a bit of a bad mood. I think people are going to have some short tempers, and you know, when we add that to the Sun-Neptune conjunction that's already making us feel out of it, tired, drained, exhausted, just generally checked out and not really wanting to deal with things, you can see how that might just put people in a bit of a state on Monday, and it might be good to leave people alone, especially like in the energy, specifically maybe of Monday morning. Another thing that I do want to address before I get more in depth into this report, that I do think is kind of a characteristic of this next couple of weeks, there is to me a very like unstable, accident prone energy associated with Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus, preparing to enter 1 degree of Gemini. Like, Uranus is an unstable energy as it is, and being at the very last critical degree of the sign of Taurus and preparing to enter the very first degree of the sign of Gemini, in the process of changing signs right now, I feel like this is even a more unstable expression of the Uranian energy, which makes me think that this whole period of time generally, while Uranus is changing signs or in the process of changing signs from the Western tropical perspective, is things are just like shaky. And I do think that we are best advised to like take that into consideration right now, slow down, just be aware, maybe be a bit more cautious, especially in terms of things having to do with transportation or travel. I just think that there could be an uptick in accidents or like sudden shocking events that take place at this point in time, just because the nature of things generally feels just very unstable right now. And I've been talking about how Uranus entrance into the sign of Gemini is really going to shift and change things in some very unintended ways, especially in the context of all of this obstruction that we've been dealing with. And remember, it wasn't just the cardinal square that we had going on. It was also this Mars-Uranus square in fixed signs simultaneously taking place. That was, to me, suggesting the Uranian antidote and remedy to all of this stagnancy or obstruction or limitation that may have been holding us back and prohibiting or limiting our progress, our growth, or expansion somehow. Also remember, Uranus is concluding a 7-year transit through the sign of Taurus right now, which has been about the entire time removing blockages to growth and reacquainting us with organic, authentic potential, removing the things that would block that potential from being able to grow, develop, be cultivated, manifest, and translate into something stable, physical, tangible, abundant in the physical world. This is Taurus. This is the sign of the builder. We are, and we have been being recalibrated in a way to rediscover our own authenticity in a way that in many cases has been forcing us to grow and to change in order to align with that latent potential and begin to develop it somehow. We are no longer being allowed to sleep on ourselves or avoid the higher, essentially like purpose or soul calling. And this past transit of Uranus through the sign of Taurus has been functioning to awaken us to true value, true worth, and authentic potential in a way that is no longer obstructed in its ability to manifest into the 3D physical world. And anything really that is still functioning as that blockage to growth in some regard, like for example, the things being represented through all these squares that we've had going on are, to me, being indicated to be essentially blown to smithereens, either through that Mars-Uranus dynamic that we had go on alongside the cardinal square, or through this other Uranian energy that we've had being activated throughout the course of this past couple of weeks, or while Uranus is at this 29th degree of the sign of Taurus, or as Uranus enters the sign of Gemini, hits the trine to Pluto, and totally forces us to transform all the ways that we are thinking about things in a way that definitely opens us up to some potentials, possibilities, options, choices, or decisions that we hadn't previously conceived of. So the Uranian influence right here cannot be or should not be underestimated, I don't think, in terms of the capacity for events and situations to just be happening, in a split second that come out of nowhere, but change everything in a way that has a very, very lasting impact. And as a result of that, I'm just perceiving this period of time as being a little bit shaky in terms of the predictable nature of things and the way that, Uranus a lot of times functions in terms of accidents and sudden events and stuff like that as well. So as Uranus is wrapping up this transit and finishing up the last 7 years of work as Uranus has been transiting through the sign of Taurus, I think that we could just definitely see a lot of just random, bizarre things go on. The barrier to entry to some new path in life, I think, is definitely being dissolved somehow right now, and things are being redirected in ways that I think that we're ultimately going to find are for the best, but may either come at a price or come through us just having to like really face some fears or deal with some material or financial or security-based hardships that could be going on as well. And again, our adherence to our faith, our ability to maintain the bigger perspective and to be able to think outside of the box as well. Remember, another like key feature of the energy that we're moving through and the times that we're in right now is our ability to pivot and like alter our thinking about things and to like make changes that break the template. Okay, this is going to be a period of time that requires this very like creative and innovative thinking. A lot of this stuff is going to be, like I said earlier, very novel, and there won't have been past precedents for it. Trying to apply the same template or model or mechanism or system that has always worked in the past to these new issues that are coming up now is not going to get the same outcome or results that maybe we had always received before. This is energy that is going to require unique, innovative, out of the box solutions. So there's that end of things as well. Another thing I wanted to note has to do with the likely themes that could be coming up this week in terms perhaps of some of these arguments or the conflicting energy. Like I said, we're still in the weeds. We're still not fully out of it yet as we get the week started, and when we're dealing with the Sun conjunct Jupiter in Cancer, squaring Neptune, squaring Saturn in Aries, the gap between the ideal of something and the reality of something could be quite vast, and that could be leading to some of this discouragement or depression that's going on as we get the week started, or also perhaps the very overly inflated sense of I don't know, potential or opportunity that could on the like same but wholly oppositional end of the spectrum be kind of causing its own set and series of problems, like the perfect world versus the real one, what we wish would happen versus what is actually happening or what is actually possible. These two things could be definitely creating a sense of conflict somehow this week. This is also like the higher mind and philosophies with Jupiter and the Sun in the sign of Cancer up against perhaps like the lower human ego instincts of things. Again, like the ideal situation, the higher mind, the higher situation, the more broadened perspective, contrasting the very narrow and limited perception of things somehow. Also, altruism and self-interest, same type of thing. Truth versus illusion. Of course, we know this is a general theme right now, coming up against one another. I do think with Jupiter and the Sun together in the sign of Cancer, security, comfort, well-being, the home, the family. This is the energy that is being highlighted and expanded with this. The contractual force coming up against it would be Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Aries. That's like the war drums, you know what I mean? So I do think that public sentiment does favor peace over war in a square conflicting type of scenario like this, especially with the Sun and Jupiter in the sign of Cancer and Mars and Neptune in the sign of Aries. And again, all month long, these could be themes that are coming up, like some type of public outcry coming up against maybe some type of oppression or government response or tyranny or like something like that with the Saturn, Neptune, Aries, and or like war type of stuff. I don't think that there is going to be public support for things along those lines based on just the way that this setup is coming together. And I do think, as I said earlier, that regardless of how cutthroat and just very hostile things may have been over the past couple of weeks when we did have these two big squares playing out, there seems to be some type of positive progress, positive momentum, breakthrough in a overall beneficial direction that may come Tuesday, Wednesday, moving into Thursday this week. But we want to be careful with overdoing things, you guys. That's always the red flag when we have a prominent Jupiterian influence. Jupiter, of course, is known as the great benefic. It does bring good luck, good fortune, blessings, positive growth and expansion, but it is essentially limitless. We can just take things out of control. We can go way overboard. Be very careful overestimating in this energy what something can give, what something can provide, or, also with the Neptune square, if you are feeling, in a very giving, charitable mood, be sure that you know that what you are giving to is actually what it appears to be, because there's also a very fraudster, scamster type of vibe that can be highly indicated. We've got a setup going on like this. People are much more altruistic and much more giving, much more generous, much more empathetic, much more compassionate when we've got a Jupiter-Sun conjunction happening in the sign of Cancer. But when we add that to a square with Neptune in the sign of Aries, this could be people being aggressively deceitful in their desire to play on people's compassions while we got this present. So maybe just something to keep in mind if you are so inclined to be very giving. Although I will also say, and like I've said, people are going to be showing up to give support and assistance at what seems like the most perfect or miraculous or unexpected time in a way that is truly beneficial somehow. So guardian angels showing up out of nowhere could really, really be a feature of the way this energy functions for us as well. But generally, the problem with this energy has to do with the fact that we've got a square to Neptune, we've got a square to Saturn. This makes it really, really hard for things to translate into anything. Whenever there's a harsh aspect going on with Neptune, for example, when we have Venus in a square to Neptune, it's never a good time to get into a relationship because it's likely to end in some type of disappointment. It's likely not to turn into anything because Neptune is not an influence that solidifies things. Neptune is an illusory, illusional, fantasy type, idealism type of energy that might seem very good in the moment, but doesn't have staying power. It breaks things down. It doesn't form things. And then in the conjunction to Saturn as well, this is the breakdown of our ability to stabilize things. And so we just have to be careful with the prospect of things and energy like this, because there can be an overly inflated, an overestimation of the potential of things. And because we've got a square going on with Neptune and Saturn, it's even though things might look really good and they might look like they are projected for some type of long-term success or growth or profit somehow, there's a good chance that it's not what it seems, or it's not going to go that way, or it's not going to translate somehow, because with the square to Neptune and Saturn, it's this thing can't get legs. It looks really good in concept and in theory and in philosophy, but it's not something that for whatever reason can go the distance. It can't become solid for one reason or another. So I don't know, stuff along those lines, and maybe just something to, again, be mindful of if you feel like you need to get involved in something big this week, or if there's some big prospect or something that comes to you this week. I would say still, continue to keep it in mind, continue to maybe hold on to it, but maybe hold off on jumping in or, executing at this point in time, especially if, again, you are not entirely confident for a multitude of reasons that this thing is exactly what it says that it is. So take your time really right now. Don't feel like you need to rush with things. Being careful and being cautious, like I was talking about earlier, this is definitely, I think, working in our benefit or our best interest right now. And again, over this next upcoming couple of weeks, a lot of things are going to change in ways that we wouldn't have anticipated. So I feel like, wading into things and not jumping in head first, probably a better way to go in this energy. And, again, just to reiterate sort of the shift in the way that energy is progressing this week. Monday, we open with the exact square between the sun and Neptune, the moon in Gemini, squaring Mars in Virgo, slow, tired, depressed, discouraged, hopeless, pessimistic, drained, over it, disconnected, desire to escape reality, hide from life, hide from the world, go in the shell. And I do think actually that this is probably a good week to kind of withdraw and reflect. There's definite value in a reflection and wisdom gained through whatever we have experienced throughout the course of this past couple of weeks. But I think a slower pace, people are probably going to be more avoidant on Monday and then just like out of it. Checked out. There could be people like literally drunk or on something at weird times throughout the day that you encounter somehow on Sunday. And it could also be like fog, just literal fog. Could be a really foggy day actually with the sun in a square to Neptune. But this could also just be like feeling like things aren't clear. Like you just can't sort it out for some reason. And if that's the case, I don't feel like it's meant to be a super coherent day on Monday. But this is going to pass. It's really, I feel like, best, honestly, if we don't take Monday too seriously, don't get too emotionally attached to it, don't get too involved in whatever's going on. It really is almost sort of like the day isn't even real for some reason, and like things that happen and go on in that energy are, again, like likely not to actually translate into much. It's a very illusory, like, unreal type of day, and things are not actually, I think, as they seem on Monday. So don't get overly upset, or don't take maybe like these feelings of lack of capability or weakness or insecurity or ineptitude or inability too seriously. I think a lot of people are going to be focused on what they can't do and all the reasons why they can't do it, or they don't have it in them, or they're not capable. And again, a lot of this is just going to be delusion that we're moving through in these moments. So don't attach to it. Don't take it too seriously. Don't think that that's your new identity, because it really just is not. And also exposing lies, exposing illusions, exposing deceit in big ways on like the other end of things. This is also being very indicated by this energy. And that is another thing that could be majorly disoriented, very unbelievable, have us kind of in a state, like not really focused on where we are, but like processing something or reliving something, you know what I mean? Or trying to figure something out, or, caught in a state of just shock or disorientation maybe about whatever it is that we are finding or discovering or learning or figuring out. So there's that end of it as well. I do think this is going to be a very interesting week, most likely, in terms of news cycles, what's happening on a world stage, sort of like the public discourse and narrative out there. But again, we need to be very, very careful what we are believing right now, because our ability to discern truth from illusion is essentially at an all-time low. Very little is real. Very little is being presented as what it truly is. And the fight is, it's like that quote this week, the fight is in the court of public opinion, and the narratives are going to be what is swaying and controlling the public sentiment. So as a result of that, I think that a lot of people are going to be, spinning tales and presenting information in such a way in order to kind of like garner public support or public trust or control the public perception of this, that, or the other thing, regardless of what might actually be true about a situation. And then also on the back end of things, those very same manipulation tactics could also be being exposed in some circumstances. So we've got sort of the whole array this week of both, you know, people trying to twist you know, spin something to create a narrative to project some type of image in order to sway public opinion, but also people like the public being able to like see through that illusion, break that spell somehow in a way that is like very revealing and leads to some type of greater change somehow. Okay, so that's all weird. And then you add just like the general bad mood going on as a result of the moon in Gemini squaring Mars in Virgo. And I don't know about Monday, you guys, but Tuesday energy does begin to shift, as I've been describing throughout the course of this entire report, and things do begin to feel more hopeful and look like the path may be opening up somehow. It is the very last day of Gemini season as well on Tuesday, and we do have generally one of the most blessed days of the year taking place, even though I do think that this is going to be downgraded a bit by the square taking place between Saturn and Neptune as well. But still, don't be surprised if there is some type of outpouring of something that goes on somehow on Tuesday. Think about it. Jupiter and the sun in the sign of Cancer. This is like my cup runneth over. Emotions, compassions, generosity, care, love, sentiment, feeling, empathy, hope, faith, truth, trust. There's likely to be an outpouring of sentiment along any of these lines. And again, like, you may find a helping hand or a supportive person in the most unlikely of places at the exact right moment to assist you in getting through some type of struggle, some type of challenge, something that you have been fighting with or struggling against. This is with Jupiter and the sun in Cancer. Cancer's ruled by the moon. The moon in Cancer energy has a lot to do with the public, the collective emotional energy, people blessing people. The whole like pay it forward type of vibe is really, really represented by this type of energetic dynamic. Good deeds begetting more good deeds. And I do think we're sort of getting on this like positive snowball, positive ripple effect that is helping to dissipate these greater challenges, as also the square now begins to break apart and things are opening up and looking up simultaneously. It's also interesting, as I said on Tuesday, the moon's placement. The moon is real important when we're talking about the conjunction in the sign of Cancer ruled by the moon. Moon in Gem, that's news, information, conversation, communication, and square to the nodes. Fate, destiny, karmic release. There could be something like extra significant about the nature of information in the context. Again, like this good news, important, vital piece of information that helps us to move forward, overcome something somehow, or just like a fated turning point that seems to be coming in alignment with this point in time that leads to some type of growth, expansion, good luck, truth, or just like turning of the times or the tides somehow in a way that like now the wind is in our sails and we are feeling more just supported generally. So I do think that vibes, regardless of the square that's still going on, are probably going to feel much better on Tuesday than they did on Monday, but we do still have that argumentative nature of things being quite prominent. So there is still that, you know, debates, disagreements, people challenging each other in terms of their understanding of things. We actually have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happening at 3 degrees of the sign of Cancer. That's the Sabian symbol for 4 degrees of the sign of Cancer, because we round up when we are reading symbolism in accordance with like any energetic degree. We read the wave of energy that's pulling in, beginning to manifest, not the energy that is waning out and dissipating. So 3 degrees of the sign of Cancer is the 4th degree Sabian symbol, and that Sabian symbol is a cat arguing with a mouse. And we also have Mars, who is at 5 degrees of Virgo right now, who actually also, another thing that we've got going on Tuesday and Wednesday in association with our new moon this week is a sextile between the Sun, Jupiter conjunction in Cancer and Mars in the sign of Virgo. That's a skip a sign aspect. This is a supportive, assisting energy, and Mars at 5 degrees of the sign of Virgo on Tuesday. That Sabian symbol is a man becoming aware of nature spirits and normally unseen spiritual entities. So again, like divine assistance, becoming aware of our connection to a higher power and perhaps ways that we had overlooked or underestimated in the past, or becoming aware of things that have been generally unseen or generally unnoticed, or that we had previously been unaware of for some reason, playing some role in maybe some of these arguments and disputes or confrontations, or like the heated back and forth of things that could be coming up as we enter and begin to move through this week and this Sun-Jupiter conjunction energy. I do think, though, a lot of these little disputes and stuff going on are going to be kind of like benign, like not super significant. It really is sort of like the more like tit and tat of things, small, trivial things, rather than, you know, these big, important issues. But if they are the big, important issues that are manifesting, this could also bring these like aggressive and heated debates that take place between the polarized forces that we do still have present as we move throughout the course of the week. But I do think, you know, as I continue to state in this report, that things happening now will generally be for the best moving forward, and whatever breakthroughs happen or take place this week will lead to something that is unprecedented, unexpected, unanticipated, shocking, surprising over this next couple of weeks. So we have some incredibly strange times that are approaching after we move through this week and begin to move through our Cancer season. And like I started this report, I'm going to close it. Faith, trust, belief, maintaining the broad perspective on things. This is where we are going to derive our greatest source of comfort and security and sense of well-being, while we have the Sun and Jupiter ruling faith, ruling trust, ruling our ability to, you know, maintain a positive perspective and frame on life and reality in the world. In the sign of Cancer, this is gaining security, gaining comfort through our ability to trust in a higher power, to maintain our faith. So cultivate your faith, you guys. Also, with Mars in the sign of Virgo right now, on one hand, be careful with like your hands and like sharp or hot objects. There could be like little like cuts and burns and stuff that are happening more frequently with Mars in the sign of Virgo, because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Mercury rules, you know, what's coming out of our mouth. It is the messenger planet. It does have to do with, you know, the verbal, conversational dynamic and component of things. That's why I'm talking about, like, you know, the arguments and disagreements that are going on. It has to do with our ideas and stuff like that. But Mercury also rules the hands, and with Mars there, it can bring like cuts and burns and bruises and stuff to be happening to the hands more frequently, like I said. So be careful with that. But another, you know, good way to use this energy, Mars is our energy. This is our action-oriented nature. Virgo is the day-to-day life, the lifestyle, the habits, routines, diet, nutrition, what we do every day, and what we get out of it, essentially. This is a good point in time, especially with Mars heading towards a conjunction with the South Node, to make changes to your day-to-day lifestyle, routines, habits, patterns, diet, nutrition that offer you like some type of additional benefit, that make you healthier, that make things more efficient or more productive for you somehow. This is a really good point in time to like make small but meaningful changes to the flow of the day-to-day life that assist us in just like becoming healthier or becoming, again, like more productive or efficient somehow. So if everything seems out of control, you guys, surrendering the burden to a higher power, maintaining the faith, trying to maintain the broadened perspective, and focusing on the small things that we can do to enhance our own well-being. I think that is, I don't know, kind of the best way that we can orient ourselves right now to maybe not get caught or get swept so caught up in all of these just like energetic tides and emotional currents, undercurrents that are out there as we move throughout the course of this week. So that's what I have to say today, you guys, in terms of our astrological outlook moving into our week, in terms of what we've got going on for a tarot message. Look at these cards that we've got coming out. We've got a pretty clear and specific message this week, at least to get our week started, and perhaps pertaining to how energy is manifesting with the Jupiter-Sun conjunction going on and square to Saturn and Neptune. This is the Eight of Wands in reverse and the Hermit. This is telling me that like things are not coming quickly, but there is a sense of inner illumination, understanding, wisdom perhaps that we are arriving at somehow, although it may be a more like internalized experience going on. Again, like this conjunction is happening in the sign of Cancer. Cancer can in some ways be a more introverted energy. Of course, it is the sign of the crab. It can favor, and it's like the home and the family, like what's going on within the walls of something, like, you know, our happy place, being more withdrawn. And also with the Neptune square, I do feel like people may just be feeling more like walling themselves off this week, or being more withdrawn, or being more isolated somehow. The Eight of Wands is an energy about like things happening quickly, specifically like communication or information coming quickly, like something transpiring, or, you know, rapid movement in a certain direction for some reason. But with it in reverse, it's also like this is a slow process. Again, I don't feel like there is a huge, and even Mars and Virgo, like that's Mars in an earth sign, like that is not a super quick moving energy either. So it seems like there is a bit of a delay or something in terms of the speed at which things are happening this week. But I also don't really think it matters that much, because this is about processing kind of like all that may have gone on and coming to some internal knowing, or some wisdom derived through experience, or some conclusion that we come to pretty much like in and of our own regard. Like this is not something that other people or like some type of group seems to be contributing to. It seems to be more of like an isolated experience. So if you find that you're feeling the need to kind of withdraw, isolate, pull back in order to just like get your thoughts in order before you move forward with something, I would say this is the advice here. Like I was saying earlier, you know, we want to be wading into things right now. We don't want to be jumping head first. So we want to be, to the best of our ability, discerning internally, and also trust your gut, trust your intuition. Jupiter is the truth, the sun is there, that's a highlight on the truth, but it's coming through in the Cancer energy, which is like the gut instinct. That's the coming through in like the feeling nature, the intuitive, the moon, right? This has to do with our intuition, even like unconscious energy, or dreams and sleep and stuff like that as well. Like we may actually be receiving more accurate impressions through our intuition than through information or what other people are saying to us this week. So really trust your gut this week. It is, I think, quite an accurate compass and guide. While we are moving through energy that does make it very difficult to discern what is real and what is true and what is not. So yeah, not being influenced by others, making the choice or decision for yourself before you move forward with something could be, I don't know, like some good advice. That seems to be what the message is saying. We also have the Four of Wands in reverse on the back of the deck. Things could, again, like feel quite unstable, or there could be like part of what we maybe need to get clear about is whether or not we want to continue maintaining something, or whether it's time to maybe like uncommit ourselves from something that we've been invested in or committed to for a period of time. But again, like, I feel like before we necessarily go and destabilize everything, which may or may not actually be in our control, we should try our best to cultivate our own personal opinion or understanding, or gain some enlightenment about a situation before we take action and proceed and move forward. So slow and steady does it this week, you guys, and we need to think before we act. I think that is kind of what that message is saying. So I'm going to get us a synchronicity card now. I'm going to ask for one final piece of advice from God's Spirit Universe. What do we need to know? What should we keep in mind? What should we tell ourselves as we move through the energy of this week, get the week started, move through the Sun-Jupiter conjunction? And wouldn't you know it, you guys, our card says trust, which is very relevant when we are dealing with a Sun-Jupiter conjunction, the planet that has to do with truth, and that has to do with trust, and that has to do with faith, okay? Trust also in hymns, Psalm 37:5. Trust in God to lead you to the person you need to fulfill your needs. Make certain you are the type of person that person would wish to associate with. Make certain you have defined your needs and desires before you make your request. Remember, all things are possible through God. So, as I was saying before we got into the tarot message, to me, Jupiter and the Sun conjunct in Cancer, our home base right now needs to be our trust, our hope, our faith, our broadened perspective, our knowing that, you know, things are working for us and not against us, and, you know, our faith in the plan and the path that is currently unfolding. That's what our synchronicity card for today is as well, you guys. Trust the process right now. Things are, you know, they're real crazy out there, and they're gonna probably get even more crazy, but we are going through a shift of ages right now. We are going through a paradigm shift, and we're going through also like a pretty massive epic generational karmic clearing. So all that stuff can't happen without some type of upheaval, you know, like shaking the foundations, things that have been stuck and fixed and blocking growth for a long period of time cannot continue to maintain that situation, okay, now and moving forward. And whatever force is required in order to shake things loose and allow true growth to occur is going to happen. And that's a lot of what we're seeing right now, and probably what we're going to be seeing as we continue to move through this week and the rest of the summer. So that's what I have to say today, guys. A message from the stars, a message from the cards. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, you guys, share it with your friends if you think that they would also enjoy this type of astrology content. Leave me comments, you guys. I am so grateful for your presence on my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I really truly appreciate your contributions, and when you let me know what's going on with you guys out there, especially if it reflects what's going on in this energy, or if it is in alignment with what I'm talking about. I really value that. Let me know. Drop a comment in my comment section below. If you want to know what's on this whiteboard, I take pictures of the board, post them in a Facebook group that is linked in my description box below. That's where you can find that. And come back with me on Wednesday, you guys. As I've mentioned, we are going to have a new moon in the sign of Cancer that we're going to be talking all about, and I will be back to do just that, and you surely don't want to miss it. So I'll see you then, guys. Have a really beautiful start to your week, and until then, bye.